I'd like to introduce Steve Merager. He's been a member since August of 2018. And what he would say about his career is that after many years in corporate life, leading teams to produce high-quality financial and IT results, he realized that his calling was to help move smaller companies to a much higher operational level by working with them directly. He's thrilled to introduce highly effective concepts and practices to these rising companies and give them a unique competitive advantage. Steve, take it away.
Thanks, Kate. So what I do is often described as a fractional CFO. So what that means is that I'm able to bring to small businesses the financial and accounting, the finance and accounting systems and departments sometimes in the small businesses that the larger businesses have. That's just part of what the businesses have because they have so many resources. But typically the large businesses, they have departments, a lot of people doing these things. Whereas a small business may only need part-time from somebody to do this work. So I'm going to go over some of the things that I do, and it's not going to be all-inclusive, but it'll give you maybe a sensibility of what I do. Really one of the first things we do is we see what the client's goals are. That's really important. It's really important to understand what the vision is, but then it's also, it's taking the vision and then looking at what's happening with the books, what's happening operationally, what is happening in the real world with what they're doing, and seeing if that's the correct, if that matches up with what their vision is. And so what we'll do is we'll go through and we'll do a number of different things, including a budget, which is huge for a business. What a budget does is it's having the conversations beforehand, before something happens, so that when the thing actually happens, there's a plan. There's something that we know how the resources are going to be allocated when that happens. So in life, we have choice. We have the choice of either not having a conversation or having a conversation right before something happens. But if we think about things, if we go through and have a long-term sensibility of what business is doing, we can tease out what's probably going to happen in the business. So one of the things I also do is I work with a bookkeeper if the client has a bookkeeper. This is sort of typical. Maria, of course, does that. I thought she was going to be here, but a bookkeeper is an absolutely critical part of the business. They're the ones that they document the story, and there's a lot of people see the numbers, financial reports that come out, and they see a bunch of numbers, and their eyes cross, and they go, oh, I don't want to look at this. But a good bookkeeper will tell the story of the business in those books, so that what the business is doing, if you look at it, you can think, yes, that is what my business is doing. So there's a number of different aspects with that. There's things like technical things like chart of accounts, and that's how the story is laid out. Those are sort of the chapters. You have employee expenses, you have income, you have all the different types of income and expenses. So those are sort of the chapters. But then there's also the actual transactions. And I know this sort of sounds like wonky bookkeeping stuff, but if you're doing this and when you're working with your bookkeeper, every single one of those transactions is critical for you when you get your reports back. And I've seen this before, it was from from a finance point of view, it was horrifying. I was asked to help a client, potentially help a client, and the bookkeeper was telling me, showing me what was happening, and there was all these, it was a restaurant, and there was all of these transactions. And QuickBooks does this thing, it's helpful, and it tries to say what each of the transactions are, like food, travel, whatever it might be. A good bookkeeper will take the time to look at probably each one of those, at least make sure that if it comes from a certain vendor, that that is correct. Anyway, she hit accept all. So there were probably 1,000 transactions that she just put into the system. So having that sort of oversight, looking at it, making sure that the bookkeeper is doing this, you know, it's a management, it can be a management oversight relationship. Or it can be just working side by side. It's perfectly fine either way. You know, there's things we want to do. We want to make sure that a company is as simple as possible. Complexity is a great way to ruin things. If you have a lot of checking accounts, a lot of credit cards, different types of loans, it can be disastrous to a company if they're not managed right. And sometimes that is necessary. We want to make sure that it's necessary. We want to be intentional in all of these things. There's also month end. At the end of every month, we want to make sure that we have done all of the things. And it's things like I have a company that it's a startup, and we have notes that are outstanding, convertible notes where people put money into the company. And it's a lot of money. It's tens of thousands of dollars. And one of those things that we do is we want to make sure that that's posted every month in that month so that we know what that expense was. You know, invoicing. A lot of us in our business, it's a long road to the point where we actually create an invoice. And there's this thought of, I created the invoice, that's all I need to do. Now I can just go on to the next job. But a lot of times I've worked with a lot of companies where the company is making great revenue and they're not collecting the money. And this can be, of course, disastrous to a company as well, because it's actually getting the money into the company that's important. You know, what I'll do is oftentimes, of course, you know, talk with the client, we'll get a strategy. I'll get an email that sets me up as a CFO for this company with the email with the domain, and I will. There's a certain methodology to talk with clients, and have the relationship be amazing afterwards, and have them pay everything. And for me, it's something that is second nature, but the thing is, it brings in the revenue that should have been in a long time ago. So, you know, there's also things like paying bills. We can, a lot of times, talk with the vendors. Ask them. Again, simplify. That's one of the things we can do. There was that restaurant. One of my initial recommendations was, could we get the vendors to give us a bill every week instead of every day? You know, we want to make sure that we're getting a reduction in the bill if possible. If we can pay it immediately and get 2% off over a good amount of time, that makes a really substantial difference. Sometimes businesses need loans, and we want to make sure that they have access to that. So that's something that we do as well. Creating a payroll system that works, that is the least expensive option possible, that works the best, that is integrated with our financial system so that individuals can put in their time. And that's another piece as well that a lot of businesses do not do, especially businesses that are complex and have been in business for a long time, is actually setting up timekeeping. And a lot of, and again, especially if there's a lot of employees. What happens, so timekeeping, a lot of professionals sort of push back, like, I'm a professional, I'm here, I do all my work, but that's not the point of timesheets. The point of timesheets is later on that when a year from now, there is an analogous bid that's coming up, and there's the thought of, well, let's go back and data mine what we did on this other project years back. You have all of that information. You know what everybody did. You know the level of effort of everybody. And it really allows a company to bid in a correct way so that it maximizes the profit. It's absolutely critical. It sounds like a small thing, but again, especially for a complex company with a lot of employees, it's critical to do that. I'll do it real quick. Negotiating, as I said, vendor costs, negotiating, resurrecting a deal. Sometimes deals fall apart because the CEO, because there's a personality difference. I've worked with companies where my personality is almost polar opposite of the other individual, and I've spoken with this potential client, and we've worked out a deal where the client comes back and says, yeah, maybe I don't want to talk with the CEO, I'll just talk with you or somebody else directly. And so that's part of it as well. And I'll just finish with the last thing. The CEO and probably CFO are probably the two people in the company that know everything that's going on in the company. And so what I am able to offer is a sounding board, somebody that the CEO can talk to and really get advice that looks at the entire company, so that we're both looking at the company together. So I could go on and on and on. We have about 3 minutes. Anybody have any questions? Yes. Rob.
So, quote unquote, how fractional is Fractional CFO? And this is kind of like a two-parter, because at what point do I send somebody on to you to make it worth their return on investment?
Well, so first of all, it doesn't have to be a set amount of hours going forward. A lot of times what happens is there's a larger number of hours, and then over time it becomes, 50-25% of what it was.
So if I have someone who's doing a startup and it's obviously that they're floundering to a certain degree, do I just send them on to you for a consultation to see where it goes, or to what extent they actually need you, or whether it's even profitable for them to work with you?
Yeah, we're right. We'll get a plan together, see where the opportunities are, and it can be any number of things. It can be just simplifying things. One of the biggest parts of this is just having things bubble up so that there's awareness. And once there's awareness, it's true in life, in almost anything, is once we're aware of things, it becomes so much easier to deal with them. Even if we don't, even if I just do that for a company, say, you may not have realized this, but this is what's happening. And then they say, okay, well, I'll deal with that. But at least they can see it. And that's one of the things that, that happens most, is that there's just not that visibility in the company. People are working on their companies. They're working on that thing that excites them, and the reason they got into the business, or to make money, or both. And it's just not something that they've had the time to think through. Any other questions?
Well, I work with Steve on TRP leadership, and the way you look at numbers to reflect reality, to give information clearly, because numbers themselves don't mean anything. They have to be put into some sort of context. And the way you can organize that so quickly, it blew my mind. The way you categorize things and it's like, because we were sharing like a computer screen, he was like that, and I'm like, what? I was getting whiplash. Because you're so comfortable and so good with how are we going to make these things give us meaning? How does this information create meaning? Right? And you were just amazing at that. So I was taken aback.
One last thing, I have a testimonial for you too. I know a CEO who was complaining of not having time, et cetera, and really having to focus on numbers. And so I referred Steve to them, and Steve was able to do some work for them, helping the CFO. It was project specific. It wasn't necessarily like an ongoing thing, but anyway, it was great.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, so good job.